The air conditioning in the conference room was cranked so low that the air felt sharp. Yet Maya still felt uncomfortably warm. She spun a pen between her fingers, her focus elsewhere, her eyes darting to the phone sitting face down on the polished table. The screen stayed dark. No new notifications. Maya, what are your thoughts on this proposal? The project manager's voice snapped her back to reality. She looked up to find every eye in the room on her. A professional smile materialized on her face instantly. I think the overall direction is solid. We just need to hammer out some of the finer details. It was her go-to noncommittal answer, a catch-all that worked for almost any discussion. As expected, the manager nodded satisfied and moved on to the next agenda item. Maya let out a silent breath of relief, her gaze returning to her phone. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Ethan hadn't texted her all day. That wasn't just unusual, it was unheard of. Ever since they started dating 3 years ago, his routine was clockwork. A good morning text when he woke up. What's for lunch, message around noon. What time are you getting off, in the afternoon? Sometimes she found the rigid check-ins a little suffocating, even annoying. But after 3 years, it had become the familiar rhythm of her day. Today, there was only silence. She opened her Messenger app and pulled up her chat with Ethan. Their last exchange was from the night before, just before bed. He'd asked if she wanted to check out a new art exhibit that weekend. She'd replied, "We'll see. Derek might have asked me to play tennis." Thinking back, the response seemed colder than she'd intended. Maya hesitated, then typed, "Crazy day at work." After hitting send, she placed the phone back on the table, forcing herself to tune into the meeting. 10 minutes crawled by. The phone remained silent. The moment the meeting adjourned, Maya was the first one out the door, dialing Ethan's number. It rang for a long time before he finally picked up. "Hello," his voice was as calm as ever. She could hear the soft click of a keyboard in the background. He was clearly working. "You didn't text me today," she said, her tone carrying a note of grievance she hadn't intended. There was a pause on the other end. "Got swamped with a project proposal. Sorry, just slipped my mind. Is everything okay?" His reply was too flat, so devoid of emotion that it made her uneasy. "Nothing's wrong. I was just checking in. What time are you done tonight? Want to grab dinner?" "Probably not tonight. I'm going to be here late. You should just eat without me." Maya bit her lip. "What about tomorrow? You said you wanted to see that art exhibit." The keyboard click stopped. "You seem to be considering it. Let's play it by ear. I've got to run. Something just came up. I'll talk to you later." Before she could respond, he had hung up. Maya stared at her phone, a strange, indefinable sense of loss washing over her. "What's wrong?" "Fight with Ethan?" her coworker Jennifer asked as she walked past. Maya quickly wiped the expression from her face and forced a smile. "Nope, he's just slammed with work." Back at her desk, she stared blankly at her computer screen, an unshakable feeling that something was wrong. That feeling was confirmed on Friday evening. Friday was their standing date night for 3 years. Every Friday, without fail, they had dinner together. Sometimes they'd see a movie. Other times, they'd just take a long walk home. But this Friday, at 5:30 p.m., a text from Ethan came through. "Have to work late tonight. You should make your own plans." Maya's stomach dropped as she read the terse message. She called him immediately, and this time he answered quickly. "Working late again. Didn't you say the project was due on Wednesday?" Something else came up. Ethan's voice was still perfectly level. "You should go play tennis with Derek. Hasn't he been asking you?" On the surface, it was a reasonable suggestion, but it lacked the subtle hint of jealousy that had always colored his words before. In the past, the mere mention of Derek's name would have elicited a flicker of annoyance, even though he never explicitly told her not to see him. "Are you okay?" Maya asked, probing. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? Just busy. Look, I've got to jump on a call. Have a good weekend." The line went dead again. Maya sat frozen in her office chair as a quiet panic began to creep in. Over the weekend, Ethan used work as an excuse to turn down every suggestion to meet up. By Sunday night, Maya couldn't stand it anymore. She took an Uber to his apartment. She had her own key, but decided to knock. After a moment, Ethan opened the door. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair a mess, looking like he had genuinely been working from home. "Hey, what are you doing here?" he asked, stepping aside to let her in. There was no surprise, no delight in his tone. "Just wanted to see you." "It's been a couple of days," she said, walking into the living room. His laptop was open on the sofa, surrounded by scattered papers. A half-empty mug of coffee and the remains of a sandwich sat on the coffee table. It seemed he really was working. "Is the project giving you trouble?" she asked, her voice softening. "Just a few hiccups, but it's manageable." Ethan walked to the kitchen. "Want something to drink?" "Just water is fine." He handed her a glass and returned to his laptop. "Sorry, I really need to get this section done. Can you hang out for a bit?" Maya nodded, sinking into the armchair across from him and watching the focused line of his profile. Everything looked normal, but her gut screamed that something had fundamentally changed. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. It was Derek. "Maya, you free tomorrow night? A friend gave me a couple of tickets to a play, supposed to be amazing." She glanced at Ethan instinctively. He was still staring at the screen, seemingly oblivious to her call. "Tomorrow," she began, hesitating. "You have plans?" "I thought you said Ethan was buried in work this week." "He is, but..." "Great. It's a date then," Derek said in his usual presumptive way. 7 o'clock, same spot we always meet. "Talk to you then." He hung up before she could protest. Maya lowered her phone and found Ethan looking at her. "Derek," he asked, his face unreadable. "Yeah, he has tickets to a play tomorrow night. Asked if I wanted to go." Ethan nodded. "Sounds nice. You should go." There was none of the usual subtle irritation, no hint of a pained expression, not even a follow-up question. He just calmly accepted it and turned his attention back to his work. The anxiety in Maya's chest tightened. "You don't mind?" she couldn't stop herself from asking. Ethan looked up from his screen, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "Mind what? You've always said you're just good friends." He was right. That was the exact phrase she always used to reassure him. But hearing it from his lips now, it sounded clinical and foreign. "Yeah, we are just good friends," she echoed, searching his face for any trace of emotion. She found nothing. At work on Monday, Maya was completely distracted. During lunch, she finally broke down and told Jennifer about Ethan's bizarre behavior over the weekend. "So, let me get this straight. Ethan isn't getting jealous about you hanging out with Derek anymore?" Jennifer asked, chewing on her straw thoughtfully. "It's more than that. He's become so calm. It's like he doesn't care about anything." Jennifer tilted her head. "Isn't that what you always wanted? You were the one complaining that he was too clingy, too controlling." Maya froze. It was true. She had complained to Jennifer countless times about how sensitive Ethan was, how he was always needlessly wary of her male friends, especially Derek. "But I never wanted him to be this cold," she whispered. Jennifer shrugged. "Guys are weird. Maybe he just finally gets it. You've been together for 3 years. It's normal for the passion to fade a little." The explanation did nothing to soothe Maya's unease. That afternoon, she found her mind drifting, replaying the last few weeks, trying to pinpoint the exact moment things had changed. And then she remembered the fight, the one about a month ago. It was a Saturday night. Derek had organized a birthday party for a friend at a bar downtown. Ethan was supposed to come, but he got stuck working late. Maya went by herself. She was having a good time, lost in the music and conversation, and forgot to check the time. She didn't notice her phone's battery dying. By the time she realized how late it was after 1 a.m. and her phone was dead. She borrowed Derek's phone to call Ethan, only to discover he'd been out looking for her for over 2 hours. That night, they had the worst fight of their entire relationship. "I called you 20 times. I thought something happened to you," Ethan had yelled at a volume she'd never heard from his normally gentle demeanor. "My phone died." It wasn't on purpose, she'd shot back, feeling he was overreacting. Do you have any idea what time it is? Do you know I was about to call the police? Seriously, I was just out late with friends. With Derek, Ethan's voice turned to ice. It's always Derek. Here we go again, she'd thought. We're just friends, Ethan. Can you please stop being so paranoid? Friends? He'd scoffed. What kind of friend knows you have a boyfriend but still asks you out late at night all the time? What kind of friend gives you such a personal gift for your birthday? What kind of friend? Enough. She cut him off. If you can't trust me, then what's the point of being together? The question seemed to land like a physical blow. He went silent for a long time before finally whispering, maybe there is no point. They'd given each other the silent treatment for 3 days before making up. After they reconciled, Ethan seemed to stop commenting on Derek's presence in her life. He stopped asking where she was going or who she was with. At the time, Maya had been relieved, thinking he'd finally seen reason. Now, she realized it might not have been a compromise. It might have been surrender. After work, Maya wavered on whether to meet Derek for the play. She ended up going, partly because she didn't want to bail and partly to test Ethan's reaction. The play was brilliant, but her mind was elsewhere. During intermission, she texted Ethan. The play is amazing. Are you done with work yet? Half an hour later, a short reply came back. Almost. Have fun. He didn't ask who she was with. He didn't ask when she'd be home. There was no emotion at all. This complete trust, this total freedom now felt more terrifying than any of his old jealousies. After the show, Derek suggested grabbing a drink. Maya declined. I have to be up early for work tomorrow. Derek looked surprised. That's a first. Ethan cracking down on your curfew. No, she said, an unexpected bitterness in her voice. He doesn't care what I do. When she got home, she sent Ethan another text. I'm home. Okay. Rest well. The reply was as always brief and bland. Maya stared at the message for a long time. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Ethan didn't care anymore. She didn't sleep that night. The next day, Maya went straight to Ethan's office building and waited for him in the lobby. When he walked out and saw her, a flash of surprise crossed his face before it settled back into the placid calm. You didn't tell me you were coming, he said, his tone gentle but distant. I wanted to surprise you, Maya said, trying to sound cheerful. Let's get dinner. Ethan hesitated for a second before nodding. At the restaurant, Maya watched him carefully. He acted the same as always, pulling out her chair, remembering the dishes she liked, asking about her day at work. But something essential was missing. His eyes no longer followed her with that intense focus. He wasn't hanging on her every word. The love that had once been a palpable force between them was gone. You seem really busy lately, Maya ventured. Projects at a critical stage. It's been a bit hectic, he said without looking up from his steak. What if we go for a hike this weekend? You haven't taken me out in a while. Ethan paused. I'll probably have to work this weekend. Besides, didn't you and Derek have plans to play tennis? There was again that calm acceptance. No trace of resentment. Maya put down her fork and took a deep breath. Ethan, we need to talk. He looked up, his expression neutral. About what? You've been different lately. You don't care who I go out with. You don't ask when I'll be home. You don't, she trailed off, suddenly realizing how ridiculous her complaints sounded. Wasn't this the freedom she had always demanded? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he gently set down his own fork. Maya, do you remember what you said during our last fight? Of course she did. The words, if you can't trust me, then what's the point, had haunted her with guilt for weeks. I remember. I was angry. I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry. Ethan shook his head. You don't need to be sorry. You were right. I've thought about it a lot. A relationship built on constant distrust and fighting really doesn't have a point. So, you just decided to stop caring? Maya's voice trembled. I didn't stop caring, he said, looking at her with a calmness that was terrifying. I just accepted it. I accepted your friendship with Derek. I accepted that you need more freedom and space. I accepted that we have different ideas about what boundaries in a relationship look like. His words were rational, mature, and they chilled her to the bone. Do you still love me? She finally summoned the courage to ask. Ethan didn't answer right away. He paused, then said, I do love you, but love isn't a reason to control someone or demand they change. I have to respect your choices and your friendships. It wasn't the answer she wanted. She would have preferred his jealousy, his anger, anything over this detached respect. The rest of the dinner passed in silence. On the drive home, he was as considerate as ever, opening her car door and walking her to the lobby of her building. But when he said goodbye, there was no kiss. Just a brief, light hug that was over as soon as it began. Good night, Maya, he said. And there was a knowing sadness in his eyes, as if he could already see the end. In the weeks that followed, Maya scrambled to fix things. She started turning down Derek's invitations, coming straight home to cook dinner for Ethan, and planning weekends that were just for the two of them. But every time, Ethan would just accept her efforts with a gentle smile, never reciprocating with the passion he once had. Even more unsettling, she noticed his life was changing in quiet ways. He started going to fitness classes he'd never been interested in before. He joined a book club. He went hiking with his coworkers on the weekends. His world, which had once revolved entirely around her, was now spinning on its own axis. One evening, after she turned down another invitation from Derek to make dinner, Ethan called to say he was working late and wouldn't be home to eat. Who are you working with? Maya asked, a sharp, jealous edge to her voice that she didn't recognize. There was a pause. A few people from my team. We're probably going to be here a while, so don't wait up. That night, Maya sat alone at her dining table, staring at a full spread of cold food. She finally admitted the truth to herself. She was losing Ethan, not because he found someone else, but because he had finally let go of the rope. The next day, Maya did something she never thought she would do. She met up with Derek and told him they needed to see less of each other. Derek was stunned. Why? Is Ethan being jealous again? I thought he was over that. It's not because of him, it's because of me, Maya said, struggling to find the right words. I think our friendship has been unfair to my relationship. His expression shifted from surprise to indignation. Because we hang out? Maya, we've been friends for years. We've never crossed a line. Now you're going to throw that away for your boyfriend. I'm not throwing it away. I'm just setting some boundaries. Boundaries? Derek scoffed. You know what real friends do. They don't abandon each other just because they're in a relationship. This is him, Maya. He's controlling you, isolating you. Can't you see that? She used to believe that, but now she wasn't so sure. She thought of all the times Ethan had needed her and she'd been with Derek. The times Ethan had tried to plan something for just the two of them, and she'd already committed to plans with Derek. The times Ethan had expressed his discomfort and she'd called him insecure. It's not like that, she said softly. I'm the one who didn't give him the respect and security he deserved. Derek stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head. Whatever you say. Just don't come crying to me when you end up with nothing. The words stung. She was terrified of ending up with nothing, but she was more terrified that she had already lost Ethan for good. That night, Maya waited for Ethan to get home and anxiously told him her decision. I talked to Derek. We're not going to be hanging out as much anymore. His reaction was not what she expected. He didn't look relieved or happy. He just frowned slightly. Why would you do that? For us, she said, stepping closer, reaching for his hand. I know you've never been comfortable with my friendship with him. I was too stubborn before. I didn't think about your feelings. Ethan gently pulled his hand away. His expression was complicated. Maya, you don't have to change your life for me. I told you I've accepted it. But I don't want you to just accept it. I want to fix what's broken between us. Desperation crept into her voice. He was silent for a long time, then sighed. The problem was never just about Derek or any one person. It's that our fundamental expectations for a relationship are completely different. We can work on it. We can find a balance. We've been trying for 3 years, Maya, Ethan said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. For 3 years, I told you I was uncomfortable and you told me you were just friends and nothing ever changed. I'm not blaming you. I'm just realizing we might not be right for each other. His words were like ice water. She finally understood. He hadn't stopped caring. He had moved past caring and arrived at a final destination, acceptance that they were incompatible. So, you want to break up? She asked, her voice shaking. He didn't answer directly. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of affection, regret, and pity. But beneath it all was a steady resolve. I have a business trip to New York next month for 2 weeks. I think we should use that time to think separately. It wasn't a breakup, but it was the doorway to one. Maya wanted to argue, to beg, but looking at the firmness in his eyes, she knew any protest would only hasten the end. The 2 weeks before Ethan's trip were agonizing. Maya tried to act normal, but the panic grew with each passing day. She started noticing small things. He wasn't leaving his stuff at her apartment anymore. He never brought up future plans, and he'd stopped using the word we. Meanwhile, Derek didn't just disappear. Though she saw him less, he still texted every day, sharing funny stories, asking her to hang out. Every time she said no, Maya felt a pang of guilt, as if she were betraying a lifelong alliance. The feeling of being torn apart peaked the night before Ethan left for New York. Maya cooked an elaborate meal, trying to recreate the romance of their early days. The dinner went surprisingly well. Ethan seemed more relaxed than he had been in weeks, even talking about his plans for the trip. Just as the mood was at its best, her phone rang. It was Derek. She hesitated, then silenced the call. "Not going to get that?" Ethan asked, his tone neutral. "It's not important," Maya said, setting her phone face down. But 5 minutes later, the screen lit up with a rapid-fire series of notifications. She couldn't help but glance at the screen. A string of texts from Derek. "Emergency. Call me. My mom's in the hospital. Call me ASAP when you see this. Maya, are you there? It's serious." The color drained from Maya's face. Derek's mother had always had health problems. Maya had practically grown up in their house and loved his mom like a second mother. "What is it?" Ethan asked, noticing her expression. "Derek's mom was just rushed to the hospital," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "It sounds bad. I have to call him back." Ethan nodded, his face unreadable. The second she got through, she could hear Derek choking back sobs. "My mom had a heart attack. She's in the ICU. I don't know what to do." "Which hospital?" "I'm on my way," she said without a second thought. After hanging up, she looked at Ethan with guilt-ridden eyes. "I'm so sorry. I have to go. He's a mess and needs someone there." Ethan watched her for a long, silent moment. Finally, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Go." His quiet permission hurt more than any accusation could have, but she had no time to process it. She grabbed her purse and ran out the door. For the 4 hours she spent at the hospital with Derek, Maya's mind was a chaotic mess. She was terrified for his mother, but also drowning in guilt for leaving Ethan on his last night. She pulled out her phone several times to text him, but had no idea what to say. At 1 a.m., the doctor announced that his mother was stable. After calming a distraught Derek down, Maya dragged her exhausted body home, hoping Ethan was still awake, hoping she could somehow salvage the night. But the apartment was empty. Ethan's suitcase was gone along with a few things he kept there. A single piece of paper was left on the dining room table. "Changed my flight. Headed to the airport early. Take care of yourself. Ethan." No anger, no accusations. Not even a goodbye. He was just gone. Maya collapsed into a chair, the full weight of it all crashing down on her. This was the end. For the next 2 weeks, Maya tried to lose herself in work with little success. She texted Ethan every day, asking how he was, sharing little things about her day. He always replied, but his messages were brief, polite, and he never once initiated contact. At the same time, Derek became more dependent on her as he dealt with his mother's recovery. Maya did her best to support him, but her heart was torn. She began to see their friendship through a new lens, recognizing the ways it had crossed lines, the emotional dependency, the skewed priorities, her own neglect of her partner's feelings. The day before Ethan was due back, Maya finally sat down with Derek for an honest conversation. "I need to pull back for a while," she said directly. "My relationship with Ethan is in trouble, and I need to focus on fixing it." Derek's face hardened. "Because he's jealous? After all these years, you're just going to ditch our friendship?" "It's not ditching. It's setting healthy boundaries," she said, taking a deep breath. "And it's not just about Ethan. Looking back, our friendship did cross some lines. I was constantly choosing you over him, being there for you at a moment's notice while ignoring his needs. So now this is my fault." Derek sneered. "Maya, how many times did you call me to vent after a fight with him? How many times did you complain that he was controlling and suffocating? Now I'm the one who ruined your relationship." His words hit her like a slap. She suddenly saw her own role in a toxic triangle. She wasn't an innocent victim caught in the middle. She had enjoyed Derek's constant attention and companionship while also relying on Ethan's love and stability. She had used Derek to assert her independence and used Ethan as a safety net. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm to blame, too. I took advantage of both of you and didn't respect either relationship. But I have to change that now." Derek stared at her, then shook his head. "Fine. But when you regret this, don't expect me to still be here." The threat should have terrified her, but strangely, all Maya felt was a sense of relief. The day Ethan returned, Maya went to the airport early. Her heart hammered against her ribs when she saw him walk through the arrivals gate. He looked different after 2 weeks away, more rested, more confident, in a new suit she'd never seen before. He seemed surprised to see her, but walked over. "Welcome back," Maya said, her voice strained with forced casualness. "Thanks," Ethan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. In the car back to the city, Maya eagerly told him about her conversation with Derek and her decision to set boundaries. She watched his face, hoping to see relief, hoping this was the key to fixing everything. But Ethan just listened quietly. And when she was finished, he let out a soft sigh. "Maya, I really appreciate your self-reflection and your effort." "I do." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But the problem isn't whether or not you change your relationship with Derek. It's whether or not we are truly compatible." Her heart sank. "What do you mean?" "I had a lot of time to think in New York," he said, his voice calm and resolute. "I realized I need a partner whose values and expectations align with mine from the start. Not someone who has to change who they are for me. But I want to change. I want to be a better person, a better partner for you." "I know," Ethan said, looking at her with a gentle sadness. "But true compatibility shouldn't require one person to completely overhaul their friendships and personality. People should be with someone they fit with naturally, not someone they have to force themselves to fit with." Tears blurred her vision. "So, you're breaking up with me because of mistakes I made in the past?" "Not because of mistakes. Because of fundamental incompatibility," he said, his voice laced with sorrow. "I love you, Maya, but I can't live like that anymore. I can't spend my life worrying every time you go out or feeling a knot in my stomach every time your phone rings. That's not fair to you and it's destroying me. But I've already changed. Just give me a chance to prove it," she pleaded. Ethan was silent for a long time. "Sometimes," he said softly, "love isn't enough. Sometimes two people just aren't a good fit. We tried for 3 years to prove otherwise." The rest of the drive passed in suffocating silence. When they pulled up to her building, Ethan got her suitcase from the trunk and stood facing her. "I hope you find someone who is truly right for you. Someone who can give you all the freedom you need and never feel insecure about it," he said, his eyes sincere and full of grief. "And I need to find someone who shares my values from the beginning." Maya knew it was over. She watched him get back in the car and drive out of her life. There was no dramatic fight, no third person, no single villain, just the quiet, heartbreaking reality of being wrong for each other. The months that followed were harder than she could have imagined. She cycled through all the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally a fragile acceptance. She had to relearn how to be alone, how to redefine the boundaries of all her relationships. The urge to text Ethan was sometimes overwhelming. The impulse to call Derek and repair their friendship was just as strong. She resisted both. Months later, Maya heard from a mutual friend that Ethan was seeing someone new. The friend carefully mentioned that the new girlfriend worked in the same industry, shared his hobbies and values, and most pointedly had a clear and respectful understanding of boundaries with friends of the opposite sex. The news sent a sharp pain through Maya's chest, but surprisingly, it wasn't jealousy. It was a sense of peace. Ethan had found the kind of partnership he needed, and she, in her own painful way, was learning to build healthier ones for herself. In the quiet of the night, she would still think of Ethan, of the gentle, constant care she had once taken for granted. The regret would never fully disappear, but it had transformed into a lesson, a reminder that in the future, she had to cherish, to respect, and to find the delicate balance between freedom and commitment. Some people, she realized, come into your life just to teach you how to grow, even if their lesson is a painful one. And true wisdom wasn't in never losing, but in what you learned to value after it was gone.